मैंने कहा आपको ध्यान रहा, मैंने सोचा आपको फोन करो।
नहीं नहीं, ध्यान था। आपने वो भेजा था ना, वो न्यूज़लेटर, उसमें लिंक थी।
बीस तारीख को अभी अगली संडे को संदर की
30 को ना,
27 को,
27 को, नेक्स्ट संडे।
10:30 बजे से।
हाँ, नेक्स्ट संडे ना। इस बार कौन दे रहा है लेक्चर?
दीपक श्रीवास्तव।
अरे वाह,
खराब हो गया अपने आप बढ़ जाए, ये ध्यान रखना। ये बात नहीं है ध्यान, मेरा वो नहीं तो मैंने कहा नहीं अच्छी पाएगी कभी अपने आप फाड़ते हैं ना। हाँ, वो पानी लेगा काम करे अच्छा। हाँ, पानी नहीं चाहिए अपने आप बढ़ जाएगी वजह से काम नहीं। इसको हमेशा रेडी काम लेनी चाहिए, कभी काम नहीं। तो देखिए बात के आपने धन्यवाद।
हो जाता दिखता है, दिखता है वो।
Hello. Sure. हेलो। हाँ। अरे हाँ, ये सुना बेटा हुआ है ना, वो तो तुम्हारे पास ना वो करूँगी ना कॉन्फ्रेंस जैसी। हाँ, नहीं कल शुरू होगी 5 बजे से। हाँ, तो मेरा फोन ऑफ है, हमारा पे हर लोगों का लैंडलाइन पर हेडलाइन से वाली बात कर रहे हैं। अच्छा नहीं नहीं मिलेगी, मेरे अच्छा मिलेगी। हाँ, तो और तुम सुनो। मतलब
तो हाँ दीपक, नहीं तो वो दिख नहीं रहे तो। हाँ आप लोग दिख नहीं रहे नहीं है। तो कौन से काम किसने कहाँ जोड़े हुए आप? नहीं तो उसमें राजकुमार का नाम तो आ रहा है इसमें यहाँ, लेकिन वो नहीं तो वो कौन सी तरफ जुड़े हुए हैं? अभी मैं जो लिंक भेजा था ना, अभी व्हाट्सएप पे भेजा था ना, हमने अभी देखो अपना व्हाट्सएप ग्रुप है, व्हाट्सएप ग्रुप में लिंक भी भेजा है। नमस्ते। आपने जो व्हाट्सएप पे लिंक भेजा गया है ना, अपने ग्रुप का जो व्हाट्सएप, काश्मीरी का जो व्हाट्सएप है, उसमें लिंक भेजा है, तो यूट्यूब वाला यूट्यूब पर जोड़ने की बात ही नहीं है। यूट्यूब पर थोड़ी जोड़ना है। नहीं तो उसमें तो उसमें सब लोग इसी पे जुड़े हुए हैं, बाकी जितने लोग हैं वो दूसरी है।
हेलो।
हाँ,
हेलो।
हाँ
वो
सर,
बोले
नमस्कार।
इसका
नमस्कार।
हाँ, सभी को नमस्कार। ये एक थोड़ा सा आज तकनीकी ओवरडोज हो गया हम लोगों के साथ में। वो किसी तरीके से दो लिंक क्रिएट हुए और चार पांच लोग उधर दूसरे लिंक पर जुड़े हुए थे पौने पाँच
वो
बजे
लिंक
से।
तो उसका है यूट्यूब का।
ये हो सकता है, मतलब वहां पे चार पांच लोग थे, अब यहाँ वापस मैंने सबको इस तरफ लेकर के आ गया हूँ। तो
इधर पता
हाँ,
नहीं।
तो वहां ये इंतजार हो रहा था कि शायद दूसरे लोग जुड़ेंगे। तो आई बिलीव, मुझे लग रहा है कि शायद अपन पांच सात लोग तो हैं, और राजकुमार जी आई बिलीव यहाँ पर आ गए हैं वापस इस वाले लिंक पे। आप सब लोगों को उस तरफ आवाज आ रही है? आई कैन सी कीर्ति वर्मा जी हैं, सुषमा पारख जी हैं यहाँ पर, एवा एवा एंड्रियो, कैन यू हियर द वॉइस, एवा एंड्रियो?
Yes, I hear. Yes,
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 yes.
that's very nice. That's
Yeah.
very nice. We have
I
Rita
was
Kumar.
wondering if it will be in English or not. That's why I was not saying anything.
Okay, okay. The nice having you here. We have Rita Kumari ji. We have
Thank you very
somebody.
much.
This one,
Yes.
she's from this one.
So Meg Goswami has come in here. Preeti Jain ji. Yes, that's very nice. तो सर, हम वहाँ पर अभी फिलोसॉफिकल काउंसलिंग की भी कुछ इंट्रोडक्टरी बात कर रहे थे, आपस में भी इंट्रोडक्शन ले रहे थे। आप जब सिग्नल करेंगे हम यहाँ की कार्यवाही शुरू कर देंगे, एज इन व्हेन यू आस्क अस टू बिगिन। केएल सर।
We were waiting for the Mauritius.
नहीं, ही इज ऑलरेडी देयर, वो आ गए होंगे दूसरे लिंक पर।
I think he has joined.
नहीं नहीं, वो मैं उनको कह के आया था, यशविन गोपालू जी।
Did you talk to him or what?
या आई हैड अ लॉन्गिश वर्ड विद हिम, मेरी अभी शाम से बात हो रही है उनसे।
So he joined.
मैं यस, ही जॉइंड देयर। वो यहाँ पर क्यों नहीं है ये समझ में नहीं आ रहा है, मैं वहां पे जाकर के वापस देखता हूँ।
So you asked him to.
या मैं प्रयास कर रहा हूं सर वहां पर उनसे बात करने का। मैंने दोनों लिंक खोल रखे हैं।
वो गूगल लिंक है।
हम्म।
वो गूगल लिंक है।
वो यहाँ तो अभी नहीं आए हैं, और वो वाला लिंक अब मेरा कनेक्ट नहीं हो रहा है।
So you need to call him or text him the link.
Yeah, I understand, but how do I contact him right away?
Do you have his email ID, sir? I can send him the link.
I don't think I have his email ID. I'll see if it is there given in the list. I'll see. Yash Kirti.
Email ID.
I'm trying to look for. Yes. I get. I think I get it. Y Gopalu. I am sharing. Copy it. I am sharing it in the chat. You see. ygopal2@gmail.com. A mail can be sent to him. Megji, would you please help?
Yes, sir. 1 minute. 1 minute. I'm just sending him the email.
Yes, and send him the link also, please.
Yes, sir. I have sent in the mail, sir. I hope he will
Okay.
respond soon. He
Yeah,
joins.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Let's see where he comes.
ये मिडिल
Yeah.
लिंक गूगल मीट,
हेलो जी सर।
उसमें मिडिल में जो लिंक है ना गूगल मीट लिंक है।
हम्म। नहीं, मेघ जी ने अभी उनको लिंक भी भेजा है उनकी ईमेल आईडी पर, तो वो मुझे लगता है कि जल्दी ज्वाइन करने वाले होंगे। आई होप कि उनकी ये आईडी फंक्शनल हो, इसी पे वैसे उनको मेल मिला था पहले। Yes, I think he is there now. Yashwin ji, welcome on the second line. Can you hear?
Yeah. Hello.
Yes, we were waiting for you. Yes.
Yeah.
Nice having you here. सर
Thank
अब
you.
आपको यस सर, अभी और लोगों का इंतजार कर रहे हैं अपन,
नहीं शुरू कर दो, आने वाले,
शुरू कर दें सर।
लेट अस स्टार्ट।
लेट अस स्टार्ट बिकॉज अभी जो मुंबई से रीना जी जुड़ी हैं, उन्होंने ये बताया है कि कल से एग्जाम है, तो बहुत सारे टीचर्स शायद ऑफ एंड ऑन वो अपनी सुविधा के हिसाब से जुड़ते रहेंगे, शायद इतना पूरे टाइम पार्टिसिपेशन नहीं हो उनका। तो आई थिंक वी कैन स्टार्ट। हेलो, गुड इवनिंग मनीष। So on a different link, we were there, and on behalf of this SPPCSH, it's a privilege for me to welcome all the participants here from Rajasthan, from India, and from different parts of the world. Professor KL has been lecturing on the nature, process, purpose, and methods of philosophical counseling. He has a good number of videos on the YouTube, and in these online meets, we get an opportunity to get in touch with him, and there is material generated by him, which he has also circulated. Dr. Yashwin from Mauritius is with us today, and it has been really praiseworthy, I would say, on behalf of Professor Kale, of him to have consented to present his understanding and his say theory building on what he thinks philosophical counseling is or ought to be. He has been following the philosophical counseling development here and there, and he has been keenly listening to, keenly observing what Professor KL has said over all these months and these online meets we have had in the past. Meanwhile, let me ask, is my voice audible there, very clearly audible? Am I audible to everybody there?
Yeah.
Please say yes. Yes. Thank you. So, as I said, I was mentioning earlier on that another group, I and Dr. Rajkumar here have been students of Professor KL at the University Department of Philosophy. I am Dr. Deepak Srivastav, Associate Professor in Philosophy with the State Government of Rajasthan. I am presently associated with the Government College in Alwar, affiliated to the Matsya University in Alwar. So the program today would be that very soon we'll be asking Professor Dr. Yashwin to present his say view on what he considers what philosophical counseling is. But before I go to that, let me have a very quick recap of what Professor KL has said in his recent lectures on the online meets and the videos available on the YouTube and internet. So there have been broadly four lectures in which Professor KL has elaborately spoken about the nature, meaning, purpose, and the processes of philosophical counseling. He, in his first of his lectures, spoke about philosophical practice, and where he said that philosophizing is different from philosophy, because philosophizing involves another kind of progressive or dynamic thinking, whereas philosophy might often add into a finished thought and ideology. So philosophy is more productive. Philosophizing is more productive than philosophy. It is dynamic and it is humble. Philosophical practice, holds Professor Kale, is a oral dimension of philosophy. It is concerned with the real time dialogue, and it involves some internal, uh, it is interactive and communicative. It rejects many assumptions that a theoretical philosophy might make, and that is basically the essence of its being dynamic. He also holds that academic philosophy doesn't solve the problems as philosophical practice or philosophizing does. Some extent of subjectivism, internal communication, and personal discourse are essential for philosophical practice, because philosophical practice cannot be a one and or a single and activity. There has to be a dialogue, there has to be an interaction, and therefore philosophical practice involves or emphasizes upon dialogue. He also draws from ancient philosophy and holds that initially the nature of philosophy was in fact interactive, and philosophy was meant to be transformational. So ancient philosophy, we find, is say in its very inception years, is not so much theoretical or ideological as it is transformational. And in recent years, in recent philosophy, or in the modern Western philosophy, we also see that Kant reiterating the same point. Though Professor Kale doesn't talk about the recent philosophy, but Kant has again emphasized that philosophy needs to be practical. It has to have a practical concern. Professor Kale, actually, in the Western tradition, when he talks about Western tradition, he begins his talk normally from Socrates, and he says that the method that was employed by Socrates was that of midwifery, and that is how, that is one of the ways the philosophical counseling can go ahead. And Socrates doesn't pronounce himself to be a philosopher. He is someone who says that I know nothing. He is someone who teaches nothing. And he says that the wisdom or real crux of knowing lies in knowing what you do not know. And this is where philosophical counseling becomes so important, that when you deal with a person whom you, in modern terminology, call a client, it is the philosophers or the philosophical counselors' task to make counselee understand of certain facts or certain inner truths which he doesn't realize or doesn't know so explicitly. In another of his lectures, Professor Cahill has talking about philosophical counseling vis-a-vis the psychotherapy. We have students here. Sir Meghji is from the psychology department. He is pursuing his PhD in psychology, and I had a word with Megh, and he also understands. We have Professor Uday Jain from psychology here, so we have eminent people from psychology. Professor KL makes a difference between philosophical counseling and psychotherapy. He says that philosophical counseling does not deal with the problems classified as disease. A philosopher or a philosophical counselor does not take his counselee as somebody troubled with a disease. Philosophical counseling does not deal in the cause and effect, but in reason, actions, and relations. So, reason, actions, and relations are seen differently as or different from the cause and effect phenomena of the, say, medical or quasi medical terminology. Professor Kale also has been emphasizing that PC is, that is, philosophical counseling is not a therapy, as it does not base itself on client's symptoms. But philosophical counseling is concerned about knowing and probing the counselee's worldview. So, philosophical counseling is essentially client oriented. Philosophical counseling, he also believes that the cause of a problem are unexamined beliefs. So the problem is very less often, if at all, it is external or caused by external factors. The melody or the knot of the melody lies somewhere in the unexamined beliefs, unexamined values, and assumptions. So the client is actually invited, the client is actually drawn into, taken into the exploration of his own beliefs, thoughts, and values. Finally, Professor Kale also talks about the importance of dialogue, as I had said earlier. That dialogue which occurs or which need to occur in the process of philosophical counseling is not merely a transformation of transfer of information. Here, it's not like that the counselor is saying something to counselee, and counseling has to take those things as a prescription, go home and practice the advice like a medicine. It doesn't happen like that. It is not just a transfer of information, but it is a mutual understanding and insight generation between the speaker and the listener. So the listener understands or actually makes a very sincere attempt to understand what the counselor is trying to say. But not only this, it is also the counselor who tries to understand by making the counselee speak, and especially making him or her speak about the problems, about the beliefs which may be, which may not be so very well examined. So we must have a dialogue about, well, the basic questions he thinks that should be raised in the process of philosophical counseling are: who are we? Who are others? What are we doing? And what is going on? What is happening in our lives? So, who are we is a question that requires an analysis from the, say, perspective of a philosopher, not just a sociological fact or a biological fact. Who are others? Those of us who are accustomed with philosophy are very well acquainted about the existentialists, say, dealing of the problem of I and the other, and we all probably can recall what Sartre has to say about other, and he says that hell is the other. So Professor Kale is saying that as a counselor, you need to understand the worldview, and then the hidden, say, the possible inconsistencies within the worldview, which might arise as a problem with a counseling. So questioning enables deeper and logical analysis. This is what Professor Kale as very sincerely believes and reiterates. So the importance of Socratic questioning has always been there, and because Socratic questioning, he says, is very simple, but at the same time very thought-provoking. It might sound like a very trivial, very basic, but it really leads you to the exploration of the real problems. It is investigation of the concepts, and it is the investigation of the values held by the counselee or the person having some problem. So finally, there has also been a talk by him about the REBT, that is Rational Emotive Behavior Therapy. And like many of the philosophical practicing philosophical counselors, Professor Kale has been maintaining that REBT is directed towards self-help or it is a self-help or the self-management therapy. It helps clients manage their thoughts, their feelings, their behaviors, the way they think. It is the only cognitive behavioral therapy that helps people to examine their own beliefs, philosophy of life, and values and goals. And it is the examination of these which actually really shapes the life, molds the life, or even transforms the life. The emphasis on techniques rather than on insights. So rational thinking, here he is using the word rational in somewhat or slightly different way, different than held by the hardcore rationalist of the rationalist era. He says that rational thinking is a preference oriented rather than demand centric. It is flexible, it is realistic, it is functional. So REBT in brief according to him is practical action oriented, which focuses on practical attitudes, emotions, maladaptive behavior that can sabotage someone's life. So I think I have spoken enough. I have probably, I hope I have tried my best to summarize what Professor KL has been saying. And what he wants each one of us interested in philosophical counseling to do is to have a good look at the material provided by him or by anybody else in the field of philosophical counseling. He has sent by post much of the material that has been generated in shape of some books and papers. He has been sharing lectures and videos. So it will be beneficial for any upcoming or aspiring philosophical counselor to have a good access at all of those material and the video talks he has shared on the internet. Today, we have Professor Yashwin Gopalu, Dr. Yashwin Gopalu, PhD in philosophy, and working in Mauritius as a quality assurance authority in the related with the Department of Education there in Mauritius. So that is akin to, I had a word with him and he made it clear, that is akin to what we have here in India in name of UGC, or more recently in name of NET. He is also part-time lecturer, often on goes in the university to deliver lectures. Another thing, before I invite Professor Dr. Yashwin to present what he has prepared for philosophical counseling, Professor KL and the Philosophical Counseling Society receives so many queries and calls from the interested and inspiring people that how can they become counselors and how can they obtain a license to begin doing philosophical counseling. I had a word with Professor KL this morning, and he has actually desired to be made very clear that philosophical counseling is not an overnight job. It is not like something that you are a postgraduate in philosophy and you join some society and you obtain a license. It requires a real groundwork. It requires a thorough training through workshops in the methods and processes of philosophical counseling, a deeper understanding of the methods and process of philosophical counseling on one hand, and a good enough knowledge of the philosophical concepts and theories. Because in his lectures, he has been saying that philosophical counseling is not just repeating what philosophers have said. It is not just prescribing some philosophers' idea to the client or some other philosopher's idea to the client. It is a self-thinking activity, and self-thinking activity needs to be developed through interactions, through practices, through the counseling workshops and counseling courses. So we'll have more to listen today from Professor KL, but meanwhile we are already slightly late. May I, with the permission of Professor KL and all of you, invite Dr. Yashwin Gopalu to make a presentation on philosophical counseling. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Srivastav. Doctor, can you see my slides? Hello?
Yes, please go ahead. Your slides are not visible.
They are not visible.
Slides are not visible, Yashwinji.
Okay, I'm trying. Because there is some problem here. Okay. Anyways, let me present it as it is. Is it okay now?
Your voice is very clear, but the slides are not yet visible. Yes, now they are. Now they are.
So, let me thank you first for such a very good introduction. And I would like to thank Dr. KL Sharma for trusting me and for inviting me for this talk. As you mentioned, I'm Yashvin Gopal from Mauritius. I work in the field of quality assurance. It's been almost 15 years that I'm in this field. And I'm also a part-time lecturer at the Mahatma Gandhi Institute in Mauritius. I teach philosophy, culture, etc. And my interest in philosophical practice and to that matter counseling, I think it started quite earlier when I was doing my MA. I remember when I was doing my MA at the University of Pune, I would all the time ask my professors, how do I solve human problem with Vedanta, for instance, with yoga or Socrates? So I think I had that bent of mind without knowing that such a field existed. And when I started working in Mauritius, I started as an educator in culture, and then I moved to quality assurance. And I can tell you that I have been practicing philosophy in my work, which demands lots of analysis, look at documents. It's like we assess the worldview of institutions because we do accreditation of courses, we do audits, we carry out visits, we interact with institutions, with different staff, from vice chancellor to quality assurance officers, lecturers. So everywhere it's philosophy, I can tell you. So with this backdrop, it's been some 2 or 3 years earlier that I came to philosophical counseling. It was when I was doing some research in leadership. I started doing research in leadership from a philosophical perspective, from Vedanting to be more precise. And while digging, I came across the concept of philosophical consultancy. That's where I started to read about, more about counseling, the different aspects of philosophical practice. And I realized that I have been doing it without knowing that such a field does exist. So let me go ahead with my presentation. Uh, Here you'll see some milestones in the field. So as clearly mentioned by previous speakers and even Dr. KL Sharma, it all started with Socrates and his contemporaries. We had also Seneca, Marcus Aurelius. It goes on. If we have to cite names, there are lots of names in the history of philosophy. Lots of people who has been working towards using philosophy to solve the problem of suffering. It could be any kind of suffering, but I think in those days the field of medicine was not sufficiently developed. So that's why you'll see while reading texts that philosophy was considered as a core of medicine in terms of rigor, in terms of analysis, in terms of methodology. Then you'll see around 1950s there was Dr. Pierre Grimes. he started something which was called as philosophical midwifery. He was inspired by Socrates, his concept of midwifery, getting rid of ignorance, delivering knowledge and all. So he tried to combine philosophy because he was already a psychologist. He tried to combine philosophy with psychology, and he had his own way of doing things. During the 1980s, we had Jared Achenbach and Ad Hogendick. Achenbach is basically understood to be the co-founder of modern philosophical counseling. Prior to Achenbach, counseling, if you look at counseling practice, philosophical practice, in the sense that it used to be done by Socrates, Seneca, Marcus Aurelius, it had a goal. It was goal oriented. But sorry?
It's okay, it's okay.
Yeah. But then I come back, he with his approach, there was some change. The goal was not important as far as the journey was. In fact, the process was more important. If you already have some background with regards to how the system develops, so I'm not going to lose much time on that. I would like to proceed further. So you already know that philosophical counseling doesn't deal with disease and disorders. Especially philosophical counselors don't use the ICD, the International Classification of Disease, neither the DSM-5, the Diagnosis Statistical Manual for Mental Disorders, because philosophical counseling doesn't deal with disorders. It's very important to understand from the outset that philosophical counseling, as mentioned earlier, it's mere philosophizing with somebody else. And it's important to understand as well that not all problems, not all suffering can be dealt with psychological approach, psychiatric approach, or psychoanalysis to that matter. There are a few things, few types of suffering that can be dealt with philosophy. So that's why you see philosophical counseling. So you'll see that philosophical counseling is different from academic philosophy. In philosophical counseling, there's respect of the counselee's personal philosophical understanding. It's philosophical care of oneself. It's an autonomous discussion where the client discusses with a philosopher. And what is special about philosophical counseling is the uniqueness of the individual is taken into consideration. So while approaching a client, a practitioner doesn't tag that person as a patient, as a person who is ill, as a diseased person. The person is treated as a human being, and the person is treated as par. So if a practitioner is dealing with somebody, the person is as good as a practitioner. They are like, partners during the philosophical journey, right? So you'll see that the counselee is not treated as a bundle of symptoms. It's a system which is very anti-reductionist. So we don't reduce the person to a bundle of symptoms. The person is not reduced to drives. The person is also not reduced to what we call outcome of the past. So we treat the person as is. The person is an active agent in the process. And there is no such thing as patient as opposed to psychotherapy. If you look at counseling, philosophical counseling, it is a very conceptual and temporal in intent. Right? Now, some description of philosophical counseling. I know that the previous slides, they were quite vague, but I've gathered a few things which have been said by philosophers, which I've seen here and there. For example, philosophical counseling is considered as a discussion, a face-to-face discussion between a philosopher and a client. in which the philosopher thinks along with the client. This is very interesting. The philosopher thinks along with the client about problems of decision making and existential problem. There is also attempt from the counselor to understand the nature of the client's problem, to seek clarification or to provide clarification. But then it's not about providing a solution. This should be clear. The philosophical practitioner who is engaged in counseling with a client, he is not going to provide ready-made solutions. Like Professor Srivastava mentioned, it's not like you pick a few theories here and there, and then you say, okay, you have this problem, use this theory, it will solve your issue. You have that problem, use that theory. No, this is not philosophical counseling. Philosophical counseling is a dialogue. It's a system where there is exchange of ideas. There is examination of ideas which is mutual. It's not something which is, it's not a monologue. And in turn, each agent of the process will shift role. At one point in time, the counselor is the listener, and at other point in time, the counselor is a listener. And the role will keep on shifting. So you will also note that the counselor's intention is to conduct a thorough hermeneutic of the client's text. If you try to map what a counselor does to that which is being done by an academic philosopher will study text, will carry out conceptual analysis of text, will seek out meaning. But here, the text is whatever the counseling is narrating, whatever that person is, acting from himself. It could be his worldviews, could be anything, belief systems, whatever is being presented orally. That's the text. And here, the counselor will help the counselee to attempt to her own critique. As I mentioned, it's a very open system where ego doesn't form part of the interaction. It's just like the counselor is just helping, like in philosophical midwifery. It's just helping the client to get rid of, it could be an ignorant baby, it could be a wise baby as well. Maybe there are twins. Maybe sometime a C-section has to be carried out. So these are the things that are pertinent to the discourse, which occurs in counseling. As mentioned earlier, it's a very client-centered system. It's participatory. There is exchange of dialogue. There is self-scrutiny. There is examination, analysis of the client's worldview. And it's interesting to note that Ron Lahav has been one of the proponents of worldview interpretation. Shlomit Koster believes that philosophical counseling is a reciprocal relation in which philosophical thought and freedom of thought are developed. It's not only thought, but it's also freedom of thought which are developed. Something interesting happens here I can say from my own experience. When somebody goes to another counselor who is not a physical counselor, somebody else, there's still the tension. There's still something that the other is higher and lower. If I'm the client, then I will give lots of authority. It's like, it's some kind like, before you enter the counseling chamber of that person, you feel that it's a challenge to talk to that person. It's a challenge to empty oneself, like Sartre would say, you empty your cup. So these are the crucial issues that you won't find within a physical counseling session, because here at the very outset, you will tell the person that don't consider me as an authority or guru or other persons. Here we are at the same length. Here we are both learners. We are trying to investigate into what you have to say. We are trying to make a system out of what you have. So it's more, that's why we say it's more client-centered. Although it's true that in positive psychology, which is quite relatively new, there also there is this client focus, but here also it's there, but there's no authority, no sense of authority, I can say. Right? So now let me show you some important aspects of philosophical counseling, some characteristic of counseling. We've been dealing with that, but let's look at it systematically. We've seen that it's client-centered, it's dialogical, right? And the focus is more on the counseling rather than on the counselor. What the counselor will has, what the counselor believes is not so important as what the counselee has to say, or rather, what the counselee believes. Even what the counselee knows doesn't matter, or what he should do. You see, there's a difference in the sense that we are not trying, as philosophical counselors, we don't try to change the person. The very first thing, basic thing is person. We won't insist that what the person should know or should not know. This really doesn't matter much. What is more important is what the person believes, right? And also, a philosophical counseling will not necessarily focus on repressed feelings. The person will not focus on the past. So when you deal with a client, it's like you're dealing now. We are in the now with the client, right? The second aspect is caring for the client. This is a very interesting part. This is a really important aspect where, as a practitioner, there's a need to be empathetic. Right? It's interesting to know that the empathetic approach replaces a model approach to diagnosis. Right? Ron Lahab sees physical counseling as an act of caring for the soul of the client. Right? Even Socrates said philosophy treats the soul, something like that. He also says that philosophy is to be done to treat the soul, for instance. He talks about the unexamined life. And here, when we talk about caring of the client, there's also relationship with the client. And interestingly, Martin Buber, he talks about the relation that exists, I it versus the I do. So in a physical counseling environment, it's more an I-do relationship. The other is not treated as an object. We don't objectify. We also don't pathologize the person. So the person is unique, is considered as a human being, and as I mentioned earlier, it's more a partner in the discourse. The other aspect of philosophical counseling is a worldview interpretation. The main propounder, as mentioned, is Ron Lahab, where he termed worldview interpretation as live understanding or network of meanings. So if you look at Lahab, what he says can be considered as worldview interpretation is an abstract framework that interprets the structure and philosophical implication of oneself and reality. And it's good that I tell you this is one of my favorite approach, because this approach is a holistic approach, right? So focus is on the structure and the framework that makes the person's system, the whole system, his whole worldview. And also, Lahab says that worldview interpretation is also a system of coordinates, so to speak, that organizes, makes distinctions, draws implications, compares, confer meaning, and thus makes sense of various attitudes towards oneself and one's world. Right? If you look at a human being, His belief systems is what determines how he's going to behave. And from his belief system, you will also have behavior, and behavior will also influence his business. So if I'm trying to enlarge the scope, then you'll see that there are three B's: belief, behavior, business. It's like Vishwas, Vyavahar, and Vyapar. V's. So if you try to understand the interaction that there is between belief, behavior, and business, then I can say half of a human problem can be solved, because everything is at the crux of the belief itself. And with worldview interpretation, this is what is being examined. Why, for instance, why a person has a particular worldview, what he feels for a particular thing at a particular point in time, what kind of meaning that person make of himself or a situation. These are the various things that we will consider when we are using this approach, this worldview approach, right? The next approach aspect that we see in philosophical counseling is the phenomenology. Based on Husserl's conception, for those who doesn't know, phenomenology is basically the systematic reflection on the study of the structures of consciousness and the phenomenon that appears in acts of consciousness. Right? Heidegger characterizes phenomenology as a science of being of beings, ontology. So, to be quite, to tell in a more simplistic fashion, phenomenology is about the phenomenon, how as it appears. When we have an object in front of us, I'm taking an example of an object, what we do, we see some kind of form, and then what happens? Our beliefs, our biases, our prejudices, our attitudes, all these, they come in front and define that object. So when we finally conclude what we are faced with, it's not really what the object is. It's more or less an appearance. It's more something that is being projected. So the method of phenomenology is interesting in the sense that it helps us to bracket out all our prejudices, our biases, our preconceived notions, and to leave the experience or the event, or to know the object as it is, right? So, if we use phenomenology in that sense, as Max van Manen holds, right? Then phenomenology is a study of life world, the world as we immediately experience it, pre-reflectively. This is very interesting, and these are cues that help us in philosophical practice. Because I can tell you, when I started my practice, that was the most difficult thing to do. I had to stop myself to intervene, because it against the practice to. I'm not supposed to help the person to provide worldviews. The person should provide his worldviews, but I should not interfere into meaning making. And I'm sure most of you are already practitioners, or you are aspiring practitioners, and this is something that will really helps in is when you apply phenomenology in your consultation, in your counseling. So it helps one to grasp what is, rather than a projection, rather than something that we project. So this, in some sense, help the practitioner as well as the counselee to remove any sort of biases or any sort of prejudices that maybe is stopping, or maybe acting as a barrier for proper meaning making or proper construction of the worldview. So what kind of question can be asked, or like, what is this or that kind of experience like, rather than what is that experience. So we move from a descriptive approach to a more profound approach. It's a search of what it means to be human in some sense, right? So by employing phenomenology in philosophical counseling, the counselor encourages the client to reflect on her perception and her thoughts as well about those perceptions without any kind of judgment. So it's like a suspension of judgment, right? Now, another interesting aspect of counseling is the hermeneutic one, right? Hermeneutic basically is a theory and methodology of interpretation. So we've seen with phenomenology a more descriptive approach, a more ease approach. With hermeneutics, we try to make meaning out of it, but we don't put in, as I mentioned earlier, we don't put our prejudices, our preconceived notions. So in a philosophical counseling setup, the counselor interprets or understands the client text as she has lived it or is living it. And here empathy becomes a crucial element. In the words of Gadamer, H.G. Gadamer, the central task of hermeneutics analysis is to clarify what lies at the base of our interests, because we cannot understand the statement with which we are concerned until we can recognize our questions in them. Right? And also, if you look at Paul Ricoeur, a famous philosopher, he writes that to interpret a social situation is to treat the situation as text. I did mention a bit about this earlier. And then to look for the metaphors that may be seen to govern the text. This is very interesting. So what is that metaphor behind the text, behind the formulation of that text? Should the text be reformulated, reconstructed? Because at times we may be experiencing something, we describe that thing in another way, right? And because of the way we describe that situation, we start to have certain kind of feeling. We have maybe we will experience certain kind of emotions. But if we get our interpretation right, if we are able to, if need be, to reconstruct our text, or in some sense our situation, our experience, maybe that could help us to live that experience more authentically, and also it would help us to dissociate ourselves from that experience. Now, also of importance is whether philosophical counseling involves teaching and learning. Whether the relationship that is there between the counselor and the counselee is that of a teacher or not, teacher-student relationship. I can say that this is an ongoing debate. Various philosophers has different views. For example, Ben Mujiskovit is of the view that social counselor is not a teacher, not a therapist. The client is not a student. Whereas Rahman is of the view that education, counseling, and therapy are three special or basic forms of learning. Shlomit Custer believes that the client learns various philosophical ways within philosophical counseling. Ronald Lahav, he is of the view that the modern form of philosophical counseling does not provide philosophical theories, but thinking tools, which allows the growth of philosophical understanding. In some sense, it could involve some kind of teaching or learning, because at times to facilitate the interaction, the philosophical counseling process, you have to become a teacher. but just to provide some kind of some kind of scaffold. But once you've built a scaffold, you have to let the counseling to to do the whole construction, right? If you look at Vogana Ferry believes that philosophical counseling is about teaching skills, thinking skills. And this is something that she has been doing. She has been teaching thinking skills to people who are in jail, incarcerated people. And this has been a very prominent thing that she has been doing within her philosophical counseling sessions. And a comeback mentioned that at times one has to start as a teacher, right? Now, whether another aspect of spiritual counseling is a question of whether it is a therapy or not. I think Professor K.L. Sharma has dealt with the issue very lengthily, so I'm not going to give much detail, but just a few glimpses of what various practitioners thought about it. Example, Ekenbach believe it's not necessarily therapy because philosophical counseling rejects the fundamentals of therapy. The two fundamentals of therapy are the logic of therapies and the goal of therapy. So these have been covered. I'm not going to detail on that. Ben Michikovic also believes it's not therapy, right? Because the philosophical counselor doesn't deal with the client's symptoms, but rather with his whole worldview. Chung Yin Chang believes that the function of philosophical counseling is enlightening the person, not treating or cure. Scott believes that it's not, of course, it's not therapy in view of the absence of any therapeutic ideas, because Scott believes that philosophical counseling is devoid of any therapeutic ideal. But however, if you look at Ram Lahav, he believes that therapeutic effect could be there. That's why he said that philosophical counseling may involve may have a therapeutic effect, but this is not the primary concern of philosophical counseling, because primarily philosophical counseling is not therapy. Dries Boyle mentioned that it's partly therapeutic, right? And Pierre Hadot, who has been championing philosophy as a way of life, he believes that philosophy is therapeutic of passion. He's more an Epicurean when he says that. And Vogana Ferry mentions that PC has to be therapeutic in correctional settings, especially when dealing with incarcerated people, people in jail, people in reformatory institutions, because very specifically, philosophical counseling in those setups has to be associated with change of the person, because a correctional institution, a reformatory or some kind of jail, they are meant to change a person. So that's why maybe Vogana Ferry's approach to counseling is more geared towards therapy, because something is therapeutic when there are aspect of the person that undergoes change. But purely physical counseling is not believed to be therapeutic. There's also personal development as another important aspect of counseling, because when a counselor is working with a counselor, the fact that the relationship is a horizontal one, is a flat one, there's no hierarchy, and the fact that there are the ease of dialogue, then it's quite clear that the outcome of such dialogue will be personal development, because at the same time the counselor is helping the person to live deeper, to be richer, to have a richer life, maybe to live better as well. This is what Ram Lahav mentioned, and also to have a more significant life. Also, the aim of physical counseling is not enhancing or maybe having better life, but here better life, richer life, or maybe a deeper life is like a collateral issue, collateral advantage that is there. And Bryce Boyle also mentioned about it is personal development in the sense that it reorientates the client, because once a practitioner unveils the false beliefs, false assumptions, then the person is will choose to be reoriented in some sense. It's true that the counselor will not force the person to be reoriented, but the client himself or herself will choose to do that. And that's why we say that in some sense this will increase the autonomy of the client. Right? So as you've seen, philosophical counseling is applied using philosophy in day-to-day life. It treats so many things from angst, confusion, loneliness, existential issues. Right? It's like you return to ancient roots. Right. You've also covered through previous sessions how philosophical counseling is different from academic philosophy. I'm not going to deal with that in detail. I think it's clear that there's a marked difference between academic philosophers and philosophical counseling. The philosophy that is being done during philosophical counseling, and as I mentioned earlier, the experience or the narrative provided by the counselee becomes a text here in physical practice. And what is interesting, you are dealing with a live text, with the author in a live situation. If you look at the text in academic philosophy, you take any Brahma Sutra or any other Bhagavad Gita, or it could be any text, but then you're dealing with a text, but you can't see the author, and you cannot correct the author as well. If you take a text and you spot some discrepancy, but then maybe if you write a bhashya, then you can propose something, But when you're dealing with a live client, this is very interesting. The person provides a text or creates a text. Instantly, you can help the person see things that are not clear. You can ask the person, the counselor, to put more clarity into that, or eliminate something which is creating obscurity, maybe. So this is one interesting issue about physical counseling, that you're dealing with a live author of the text that you are going to analyze and examine. In terms of approaches, there has been several approaches, but we won't be able to cover all these. We've seen Pierre Grimm's approach, which is philosophical midwifery. Achenbach approach is known as a beyond the method, which is quite interesting in terms of title, beyond the method. Although Achenbach is professing a no method approach, but still it's a method. There's also Peter Abbey, who has developed his approach, a 4-stage approach, and the worldview interpretation of Ran Lahav. But the basic things that occurs in all those approaches is a dialogue. I think you have had a long session regarding dialogue, and it's clear that dialogue leads the client to self-reflective. The client becomes more reflective, and in a dialogue, the client invites the client to go deeper into his or her thinking, turning the thinking process and the whole situation into an intersubjective exchange. And this exchange results into better understanding of the client. And this is something which is very good about the dialogue which occurs in philosophical counseling. And the dialogue has to be authentic, it has to be open and non-confrontational. It's like Zavad, which occurs in Nyaya philosophy. I don't know if all of you are acquainted with Nyaya philosophy, which is an Indian school. The Nyaya believes in reality as pictured in 16 categories, and one of them is Vad, right? Maybe some other time we can deal with how the Nyaya could be used, Nyaya approach could be used in counseling setups. But this is something which should be promoted within physical counseling. Physical counseling should not be confrontational from any side, whether from the counselor's side, nor from the counseling side. Another interesting thing is the client expand his own thinking and horizon within the counseling process. And also, what is being noted is the counselee is being able to identify a variety of perspectives, a variety of insights. Maybe alone she would not have had those varieties, seen those issues, different perspectives. And this is interesting. The dialogue has been also considered as the first step of clarifying the client's issues.
Yes,
Right?
sir.
I've seen that there are four types of dialogue. The Socratic one, and not to be confused with Socratic dialogue
तो
as
मैं
developed by
इनको ये कह दूं क्या
Tyson.
वो 6:30 तक खत्म कर दीजिए.
Sorry?
हाँ ठीक.
Sorry? Can I continue? Any issue? Hello?
Yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt. Yashwinji, you have 15 more minutes to go. We would like it to be over by 6:30 because we'll be having some time for the discussion after that. So try to,
Yeah, no problem. Okay, so we have, in terms of dialogue, there are four types of dialogue. The Socratic approach, where the counselor asks questions without leading the counselor into any kind of conclusion or any kind of suggestion. It's a more a self-reflective process where the counselor tries together with the counselor to dig further on the issue at hand, discuss. The next issue is about the counselor, whether the counselor provides his views or not. Sometimes during my own session, I've seen that counselees want to have the views of the counselor. And here, the counselor will propose his own views, not in terms of forcing his own views, but just telling the counselor, just to help the counselee to bring forward his own views. It's not like I take my own views as a counselor and I fit it on the counselees. It's just giving an example for the counselee to provide his. Then we have another approach, which is which has, as we have already seen, the worldview interpretation, as advocated by Ran Lahav. It mainly deals with organizing, analyzing, categorizing, noting patterns, drawing implications, making sense of, and more generally assigning meaning to one's life events, right? And it is being seen as vision development and having both analytic and synthetic thinking. It's more about critical examination of the foundations or basic structures of the client's worldviews. The name itself says worldview interpretation and involves logic, presupposition, structure, concept analysis. As I said earlier, it's a more holistic one, right? There are also other approaches like the problem-oriented approach, where based on the request of the client, the counselor focuses on a particular problem of the person instead of the whole life situation of the problem. For instance, a counselor may ask a counselor to deal with only family crisis, meaning crisis, issues related to personal relationship, self-esteem, There are also person-oriented approach which is being used in Germany, mostly by German practitioners. And it has been termed as an ecological approach towards counseling, right? This is also a holistic approach. There is an open-ended approach advocated by Achenbach, which is a continuous interpretation of oneself and the world, and involves strongly the component of skepticism in everything. It's just like you question everything. Whenever you have an answer to your question, you can question that answer. You try to look at different perspectives. There's also endpoint-oriented approach to counseling, where the goal is often expressed by the client. This is quite similar to the problem-oriented one. There's also the client autonomy, where the client does all the talking. And very few time you'll see the counselor intervening, only for clarification. And there are many approaches. And what is interesting is those approaches leads to several types of method. The beyond method approach of Gerd Eckenbach, which consists of treating the client in the same way, but you treat all the different clients are not treated the same way. They are treated uniquely. Each client is unique, right? There's also another rule: counselors should understand the clients and make them to want to understand. Counselors should never try to change his client, but avoid all preconceived goals and intention. Clients should try to help the client to amplify or enlarge her perspective or her frame of story. There's also philosophy counseling as a way of life, which is being done by Pierre Hadot. And there are also use of philosophy and psychology in counseling, Pierre Grimm. There's also Elliot Cohen. So many others has been using philosophical techniques. For example, Cohen used it in rational emotive behavioral therapy, which has been earlier stated. And sometimes people also they decide to adopt a particular school of philosophy, and they say, okay, all the time they are going to use that particular kind of school. It's limited to a particular school. Whereas most practitioners, they will be using different schools. They may not be adept to one particular school. And that's why philosophical practice cannot have a particular standard. The beauty of philosophical practice, philosophical counseling, is that there are so many ways to approach different people. It's just that as a counselor, you need to have those tools at your hand, right? Socratic dialogue. There's also ways of adapting Indian philosophy in physical counseling, which has been doing so far, because the people I meet, they ask me, they want something related from Indian philosophy. So I've been using Sankhya Yoga, Vedanta, Nyaya, Buddhism, Jainism, and even Bhagavad Gita in my sessions, right? For example, Sankhya Yoga, in particular Sankhya, explains that suffering is due to misidentification of Purush with Prakriti. Purush is the self, Prakriti is the material world, the body, etc., the mind, and suffering occurs within Prakriti itself. Prakriti undergoes changes. Whatever we undergo, they are changes within Prakriti itself, within the body, the mind, etc., the senses. But then suffering is told to be, according to that school, when the self misidentifies itself with the body. So the aim is to dissociate the problem from the self, dissociating the problematic Prakriti from the Purush, right? And this has been observed by Annette Prince Baker also, who said that very often people, they identify themselves with their problem. And I had also several clients having the same problem, and that's where Sankhya Yoga comes in hand. There's also the approach of Vedanta, where the concept of Maya and Vidya can be used, the concept of superimposition, the concept of concealment and projection. At times we conceal reality, we project false, reality, and those false projections, they affect our situation and even cause suffering. So there are ways of dealing with those concealment and projection. There's also the Nyaya school, which is a very logical system, and where lots of emphasis is being laid on the concept of vad, debate, the concept of, for example, it says that to attain supreme good, an incumbent and agent need to have true knowledge of the nature of the means of valid knowledge, the object of knowledge, doubt, purpose, example, established tenet, components parts of syllogism, conjecture, conclusion or affirmation, debate, wrangling, controversy, irrational reasoning, fallacy, deception or unfair response, futile answer by false analogy, and grounds of defeat. We won't have time to go in detail with what those components are, but it's sufficient to understand that Nyaya as a school already had some kind of counseling, we can say counseling in between inverted commas, integrated in its own system. Because this is what, from parts of the knowables, that is interesting to know, right? There's also the use of reasoning in the Nyaya system, and they are one of the first schools to develop a very rigorous system of reasoning. It's not exactly like the Aristotelian one, but it's in a way of reasoning which could be used also in counseling. In Buddhism, there are also Four Noble Truths, Eightfold Path. Buddhists also has developed logic, and they also have provide cues that could be used in counseling. For example, when we evaluate a person, uh, there is something which is called kalpana podam abrantam. So when we are trying to evaluate a counselee, uh, we can stop our imagination, our fantasy, our biases to mingle with that interpretation or investigation of the client's worldview. So there are many things that we can take from Indian philosophy. For example, from Jainism, there is this concept of Sadvad and Anikantavad. Bhagavad Gita is mostly counseling. If you look at Bhagavad Gita, there are over 500 questions examined in 18 interventions. And you'll see CBT, you'll see conceptual analysis. So many techniques can be seen in the Gita. And I think I've already said how I've been using Indian philosophical source. And from here, I would like to thank you for your attention. I hope you find it interesting, and if you have any question, the floor is open for questions. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Yashwin Gopalji. Am I audible there? Is everybody able to listen?
Yes.
Yes, thank you. So this was Yashwinji making a presentation about his comprehensive understanding, where he started from the Western concept, mentioning, rather even often quoting Lahav, Scuster, and then switching from between Heidegger and Husserl through their phenomenological concepts of suspension of the standpoints, or the commonly held views, or the intentional approaches, and he finally comes to the say Indian systems, where well, given an opportunity, I'll have my questions myself. But in the meantime, since the slides were very say self explanatory, and he has made a very what he wanted to say. I congratulate Dr. Yashwan for that lovely presentation, and I invite Dr. KL Sharma to make a statement, and then I would take your questions one by one. In the chat section, you can write down your questions so that I can take every question turn by turn. First, Professor KL, and then your queries. Please. Dr. KL, sir, please.
No, I don't have any question.
No, not a question, but any remark you would first like to make before I can invite questions.
He has covered a lot of things. Actually, my purpose was that whatever we discuss here, the participant should present that, so that this is not a lecturing business. This is simply training business. Somebody whatever we are saying, then they are presenting things as if they have understood the things somehow. So his presentation was a quite good presentation, and he covered a lot of things. Actually, we will discuss all these things later on. Approaches to philosophical counseling. But intention, we have a syllabus. So according to syllabus, we are coming for that. One thing I would like to make it clear that sometimes people ask the question, what is philosophical counseling? And sometimes they are two, you can say the persons, or say psychologists or academic philosophers. They are most critical of philosophical counseling. So philosophical counseling should say that what is our scope, what we are going to do. We are not infringing your scope. Philosophical counseling is intended for clients who are rational, functional, and not mentally ill. I am still mentally ill. This is not our field, but who can benefit from our philosophical assistance. Now, assistance in resolving their day-to-day problems of life, or they can manage their normal life experiences. They can also, these are the issue that if suppose they have some existential predicaments or some normal life problems. Now I give you a specific example. Issues of private morality. This is clear cutting. What is good, what is up. There is some dilemma between them. Then they come to their counselor and they can help them. Or professional ethics. So this is one, I am saying. Secondly, they can also issue of meaning of life, the value of life, and then the purpose of life. They can come and discuss with it. They take help with the counselor. Issues of personal or professional fulfillment, and then issues of, you can say, the undetermined or inconsistent belief system, because most of our belief systems, they are inconsistent, and they affect our thinking process, and the thinking process affects our behavior. So issues requiring for philosophical interpretation of changing circumstances, actually, to be frank, these are the limited areas we are looking at. Then philosophical, there are different approaches to philosophical counseling. Sometimes so they're very conflicting, but when I started this thing, then I thought that according to our cultural milieu, so we should discuss something from our Indian perspective, so that then later on we should discuss all other things also. So that was in this way he has given a very comprehensive introduction of philosophical counseling.
Indeed.
All these issues we shall discuss later on in detail, not just like that. we will do it 1 hour, 2 hours for Tan Lahab, for all the first.
Yes, so thank you
If
very.
there is problem, then we can have later on.
Yes. So thank you, sir, and congratulations to Yashwin Gopal ji for having made such a lucid presentation. We are having some queries, and Gopal ji made a mention of the humanistic approach that philosophical counseling has to necessarily adopt. And there he also talked about the non-confrontationality between the client and between the counselor and the counselee. We have Dr. Snigdha Rath Chavan having a question regarding the meaning of non-confrontationality. Snigdha ji, please. Please ask your question.
Good evening, everyone.
Yes, good evening.
My question, I just wanted to know what exactly you meant by non-confrontational. I mean, because most of the time when I'm counseling someone, they try to, they confront. It comes most of the time. So I just wanted to know how. I just wanted to understand, have more understanding on it. Kindly.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Chavan, for your question. When I mention about the non-confrontational aspect of philosophical counseling, what is being meant here is it's not like I'm the authority, I only knows. So whatever the client will tell me, I'll say, no, you're not right. I'm right. I will quote text, I will quote here and there. So in some sense, I'm confronting that person. But this is not the aim of philosophical counseling. The aim of philosophical counseling, when we say the client is unique, both counselor and counselees are at the same footing in terms we treat both as humans. Here, the counselor, as mentioned by Dr. Sharma also, the counselor task is just to help the person. So it's true that we will ask questions, we'll seek clarity, we'll seek perhaps we'll ask the person, what do you mean by that statement? Or maybe we'll ask the person, can you reconstruct that statement? But our purpose will be solely in those areas. It's not, like we say, vivad in Hindi. It's not vivad. We are not like attacking the opponent in view of killing the opponent. No, our aim is to finding truth about that counseling. So the common aim, in some sense, although we say that we are not aiming at anything, but in some sense we can say that we want truth to come at the forefront in some sense. And we are not like against the person. This is something that needs to be, in fact, put in the front between during the first meeting with the counseling. I'm not sure if I have responded. If you want more,
Yes, yes. Do you have any supplement questions, Snigdha Chavanji?
No, sir. No, not.
Yeah. Yes. So we can move on to the next question. We have Jitendra Chandolia ji having some query regarding the use of phenomenology as a tool in philosophical counseling. You mentioned about phenomenology of Husserl. Jitendra Chandolia ji, please ask your question.
Thank you, sir. It was a very, what should I say, stimulating session for all of us. So when you mentioned phenomenological method, now in phenomenological method, we are analyzing the experience, it's a pre-reflectively. And when we are dealing with a client, we say, now the client comes with a very restricted or biased worldview. Now, most of the time, when we deal with such a person, the rational method, such as if we are going to tell them or persuade them that, okay, you have this limited worldview or any such thing, they are going to outright reject it, because you see, emotion works way more better than reason in such ways. So how do we, like you talked about phenomenology and hermeneutics. So how do we use them on such a person comes with a bias for a limited worldview and who isn't ready to accept that no, their views may be wrong or they might be causing the problem?
Mhm.
Yes, sir.
Okay. I will answer from my own experience, right? Uh, I've been seeing different peoples, and the approach that I've been using is a mixed one. So when I have a particular client, when I use the phenological method, I use it more or less to myself. So it's a method used so that I don't force my views on the person or my biases. So I bracket my own prejudices, my own opposition, as we say in Husserlian terminologies.
Yeah.
So this is something that I use with myself first, and then whether to use phenomenological approach with a client or a rational approach or some other approach, that will depend on the person's worldview. So if I see that somebody is a more emotional type of person, then there's a need to show how the emotion is connected with the thinking,
Yeah.
and from thinking, what with together with thinking, what could be other things that the person did not has ignored. I can give you an example. I had a close relative. Together we attended a funeral ceremony. There was a young person who expired, and he was a male person, and his young wife and young kids were by the side of the dead body. And my relative felt very bad. So while coming back from that funeral ceremony, I was driving and he was by my side. I noted that he started to have breathing problem. In fact, from that funeral place itself, he was not feeling well. So I asked him a few questions. Are you okay? What are you feeling? He said, no, no, I'm feeling awkward, but it's okay. So I had to drive from the funeral place till my place around 40 minutes. So after some 20 minutes of driving, I could notice that he was not able to breathe. So I had to drive him to the closest hospital. So at hospital, they check his heart, they check things here and there, and they give him some pills to calm the system and so that he could sleep. They say, okay, you use those pills, and after so many days you come again. Then I said I need to talk to him, but I didn't do it at that point in time. I waited for 2 more days. Then I met my relative, and then I started to tell to ask him to tell me everything what happened. So he started to narrate. Of course, I sought a few clarification, but then what happened was that situation, young person, dead body, young wife over there, young kids. So that triggered some kind of thought in him. He thought that maybe he will go something, he will undergo something like this. His kids also won't have father, and from that thought, certain emotion came in, extreme sadness, extreme grief, and from that situation of grief, it keep on persisting, and that situation had disturbed some secretion in his brain, and that's why he had those symptoms and those illness. So I try to understand his worldview vis-a-vis death, dead body, and all. So I bracketed myself, but then he started crying and all, and which I let him do. Cried for around 5 minutes, and then we resume our normal talk, and I've been using reasoning with him. So I've tried to show him, or rather, together we tried to find out what kind of reasoning led to the way he was living, or also the situation he undergone, the result of it. And we could together link things together. What could be the base of his belief system, and we've tried to construct a syllogism together, and from there we noted together that there is the particular link which is causing that kind of results in him. So as an exercise, we try to change that formula, like in CBT, they do something similar to CBT, and collab with that, there are few. The fact that the person is religious, believe in Bhagavad Gita and all. So I selected a few verses from the Gita and asked him to read it and to explain it the next time. So we had around three sessions, and in 3 sessions, he felt fine. He felt that he could if ever such situation occur again, he won't again suffer. So in this sense, I've been able to use philology on myself, but more so with somebody who is emotional. I've tried to use reasoning more. I don't know if this solves your issue.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir, for the example.
Yashvinji has actually made the mention of the case study, his experiment which he did with the philosophical counseling in response to the question raised by Jitendraji. I do not find any more questions here, so I invite directly, if there is any other question still pending in somebody's mind, or any very brief statement or a remark somebody would like to make upon the presentation and the entire discussion that has gone on today. This evening, very quick marks or very short questions, if there are any, please. May I invite Dr. Uday Jain Sahab to make a very brief statement?
Uday am I audible?
Yes, sir, you are.
Okay.
Ari, sir.
I just want to make a very brief comment that whatever the techniques or approaches philosophical approaches you are following, but confrontation with the client will be necessary there. Even in dialogues, Socratic dialogue, when you ask some question, that in itself lead to some sort of confrontation with the ideas under which the client is going on. So you cannot avoid, of course, you are not going to refute what he is trying to say, but even then, confrontation is necessary involved, and that is the resolution of that conflict which takes the problem solved. I think.
Yes, that is a very significant remark that how to avoid, well, the aim of philosophical counseling is to avoid the confrontationalism of any kind. Still, it becomes necessarily in. This is what Dr. Uday Jain sir is trying to say, that it has to be there. And therefore, after having heard this, if there are no other questions, I would like Professor KL to make a concluding remark, and then we'll call it a day.
No, I think I should start what I was, continuing. Actually, I was talking about the Buddhistic techniques and the transformational philosophy. Some of the participants are new, so I am just repeating, and then I said that the transformational philosophy is that philosophy which helps me to understand my own limitations and which also helps me to go beyond my limitations. So there are two things. Helps me to understand my limitations and helps me to go beyond my limitations. What the task of the changing is who you are to beyond and becoming the person who you want to be. So this is from existence to from being to becoming. ये एक्चुअली क्या होता है कि पहली नज़र में जब तक बदलाव आपके अंदर से नहीं आएगा तब तक हम तार्किक रूप से जीने की आदत नहीं डाल पाएंगे. So the change is essential if you want to live a kind of logical life. यानी आपकी सोच हम तो अगर हम सोच नहीं लेंगे तो बार बार समस्याओं का सामना करना पड़ेगा. This was the idea. And I said that the transformational philosophical processes has two stages. First, philosophical self-examination, self-investigation. That will reveal my limitations, or that will reveal my distorted vision of life, my limitations. And the second stage is it tells us how to step out from the situation or from my narrow, the approach of life or from the cave or my perimeter. Then I said that for this purpose we can use the Buddhistic concept of Ashtanga Marg. And I said that we can classify these Ashtanga Marg in two categories. The first category, first is the Samyak Drishti, right understanding, and then remaining 7 as a transformational methods. So I discussed the Samyak Sankalp also. Now the most thing I would like to discuss is, now you imagine yourself that you are a counselor and somebody comes to you for counseling. Then what you have to do, suppose somebody says, he comes to you, I often get angry, I am worried that my anger will flow and I will hurt someone. Or he says that my interpersonal relations are not good in a family relationship or my relationship in my work or working place. So he comes with some problem like this. Just we are discussing that the communication, the dialogue is essential. In Buddhism also, you will find the dialogue. Gautam Buddha says to his monks, disciples. So there is a dialogue. And then those dialogues were concerned with the spiritual needs. But dialogue is there. So for counseling, you must have a dialogue. I just read the issue by Professor U.C. Jain, where sometimes with the confrontation comes from 2 points of view. Well, first is that if suppose a counselor is committed to certain philosophical school, some thought, and the counselee has a different thought. So I always said that you forget that I am a Vedantin or I am something. You just listen him, helps him to understand his own fallacies. You are not saying, you have to listen. So his fallacies also. So this is the way the counseling, when you are counseling someone, or then first of all your own prejudices, your own thoughts or your theories should not come in that way. Secondly, you have to understand him and also help him to see the falsity in his arguments or falsity in the premises. So there is another thing about, if you see it in a Buddhism is a very wide school of thought, and I would recommend you that you read the Buddhism and you develop all these things. Say, for example, in counseling, the first thing is a kind of rapport, a kind of relationship between the counselee and counselor. The counselee must have faith in the counselor. So Buddhism uses the word the Kalyan Mitrata. Now Kalyan Mitrata is a kind of a kind of the spiritual beautiful friendship. So there is a meditation of Kalyan Mitrata. So you can, first of all, I would like you, those who are interested in using the Buddhism as a methodology for philosophical counseling, you should also learn certain things. Say suppose the how to a kind of meditation you should learn. You should do. Somebody asks, suppose you say you meditate on Kalyan Mitrata. Now you say first you show me how the meditation is done. So the second thing is, if you remember, I said in the last time also, when you are counseling, sometimes the counselor uses parables, sometimes he uses you can say images also, sometimes he uses some stories. So a kind of some literary forms, so metaphors. So what you have to do, suppose you are using, and these, I suggested you to read the Jatak Kathas. The Jatak Kathas are related to the wisdom, generosity, and the compassion. So when, for your counseling purpose, the Jatak Kathas will be helpful to you. Because sometimes when we talk something, then you just show this, you ask him to read this story, or tell him this story. You remember the story by the lady is very famous, that she came to Buddha and asked that my son is dead, so please help me in that. So the kind of Buddha using that such stories which were concerned with wisdom and generosity. So counselor also uses. And secondly, sometimes what happens, some counselees are interested, so you can give them some piece of a book from the book, or you can give them something to read. So by that you can help them. So they have why I'm saying that these stories and all these things, they have a transformational effect. So this is the one way of doing. Second thing is, this is a literary kind of thing used in the counseling. Now I come to non-literary form in a Buddhistic technique, that is known as insight meditation. You must have heard the name Vipassana. Then that can be used at the philosophical counseling. And secondly, this is a kind of confession of one's fault. This is also when the confession is very important. They use the word Pap Deshana. Mahayan Buddhism, they use the Pap Deshana. That means the confession of one's faults. So confession means honest recognition of greed, hatred, delusion, and have impact on mind. So that can be used when that this technique can be used whenever it's necessary. Not all the things are used. You see the client, and then you can suppose he confesses all these things, then he will relieve for that. So then person also resolves the future. Person also resolves to accept the future ethically and wholesome behavior and thought also. Samyak, they become samyak effort in that. I shall discuss some later on. So there is a kind of, what I am saying is the introspection and self-analysis is the important thing. And as a therapeutic method, I was saying that this is a very important method, that introspection self. Introspection means what? Introspection is an ability to be aware of our own desires, emotions, and beliefs that arise in the mind. And introspections, just like this, they reflect what you are. So introspection like reflective power of mirror. So mirror reveals the true picture. शीशा झूठ नहीं बोलता है. So it will show your all the weaknesses also. That is why I am saying that introspection was essential. You can ask your client to introspect. So this is all, when you are using philosophical the counseling as a Buddhism as a method, then you can certainly use these things, and you should be prepared yourself. Because if suppose you are using as a method, then you should read Jataka Katha. You should also learn to this Vipassana and Sadhana also. So these are I was discussing. Now I'll come to the transformation, the four right intention I discussed with you, and then when I say that even suppose somebody you just ask yourself, are you sure when you are going to do something? Then ask yourself, are you sure? Uh, or you ask yourself, what I am doing. Suppose somebody says, I have anger, I have a hatredness, I am in delusion, I may do something. So you can ask him, then he write down that, ask yourself, are you sure? And ask yourself what I am doing. Then all whatever we are doing, most of the time we are uh, by habit we do lot of things. We repeat things. Repetitiveness is there due to the habit. So you can also check your habit. Hello, habit. Habit is energy. So you can also check your energy as a habit as energy. So what I am saying that the most essential thing is that these things should be developed. You also develop as a counselor, and you can ask your client to develop all these things. Otherwise, how you will say that if suppose you have not developed, you cannot ask your client to use these things. So now I am coming to the next point, that is the speech, perfect speech or ideal human communication. That is why I said most of my behavior, uh, I just use the word how I improve my relationship with other people. I raise the issue, my interpersonal relationships are not good. Some people can make friends easily. This is you must have, and some people they cannot make friends easily. And then the issue is that their relationship is this type. So what we can do it, that the first thing is that speech plays a very important role in the life. Speech, whether written or an oral word, has a great impact, or you can say enormous consequences on your life. So what I am saying, you have to, how to you use the perfect speech. That is why I said perfect speech. Perfect speech. We always use the speech, but how to use the perfect speech? Speech or verbal communication is something you can say in which we have to engage all the time, whether you want or you don't want, but you have to engage yourself in the speech. We use speech to express our ideas. We use our speech to express our feelings, emotions, and to others. So perfect speech leads to better understanding of you, and consequently your relationship with them improve. So somebody comes with that. Now how you can use in your counseling? So what I am saying that this information you can use the right speech if you read from philosophical counseling for purposes. So you read this Buddhistic perfect communication. Now if you see, now I give an interesting example. In historically, you know the historical development of Buddhism from Hinayan to Mahayana and Mahayana to Vajrayana. And then generally we talk about man as a man consisting of mind and body, or sometimes mind, body, soul, like that. But Buddhism interestingly talks three things: body, speech and mind. Now, body, when you use the body means head, speech means throat, and mind means heart. So, body and then the speech and mind, they are equal. So, what I am saying that speech, a perfect speech is that speech which communicates both our thought and emotions. So this is the thing. Then how to develop or how to use these things. So what I am saying that this is the this knowledge we can use in a counseling method. Perfect speech gives expressions to wisdom. It gives the expression to love. It gives the expressions to compassion, karuna. So perfect is truthful, affectionate, helpful, promotes harmony and unity. So this is the positive side of the speech. Now, so what I am saying that in other words, abstaining from false speech, abstaining from malicious speech, abstaining from harsh speech, abstaining from idle chat, जिसको गपशप बोलते हैं. बुद्धा टॉक्स अबाउट दीज 4 थिंग्स. अब नेगेटिवली मैं जो बात कह रहा हूँ ये है कि नेगेटिवली तो आपको चार चीज़ों से बचना चाहिए. एक तो कहते हैं कि आप जो है गलत झूठ ना बोलें, किसी के प्रति हेट घृणा की बात ना करें, और किसी के साथ हार्श वर्ड मतलब ऐसा शब्द ना कहें जिसको बुरा लगे. और लास्ट में है कि गपशप करना. ये दिस इज द नेगेटिव थिंग. एंड इसलिए हाउ स्पीच शुड बी truthful, affectionate, helpful, and promote the harmony. So this is good. Now I come to the point that these are the 4 levels I just taught, and we call them they are the guiding principles for speech: loving, compassionate, and authentic. Because I am saying somebody has come to you and he says there is some problem in my communication. मेरा बड़ी जल्दी झगड़ा हो जाता है. I cannot make friends. Then you should find out his way of speaking, all this, and you can use this information there. So level of truthfulness, this is the first level. It means that abstaining from false speech. So this is the first level, and then when I say this level of truthfulness means you are abstaining from false speech. Now what is the meaning of true or truthfulness? It should be reliable. It should be worthy of confidence. It should not be a deceiver of the people. So one should not speak deliberate lie, even in the just joke person. So not to tell a lie, speak truth. Now the problem is, somebody asked me, what do you mean truth? It is very difficult to answer this question. What is the meaning of truth? Now I'll say, somebody said the accuracy. The accuracy means when you are telling, whatever happened, you accurately say that thing. But for the accuracy, you need a training. Without that, you cannot do. I give the example. In scientific research writing, you are writing what you have done. So you are accurately giving the description of that. And for that, you have to learn the technique how to write accurately. So accurately requires a kind of, the training for that. But accuracy is not the whole story. Not truthfulness in this sense, means the factually accurate. So what I am saying that when you are saying that you must be honesty, sincerity, what we really think. Is suppose you develop in your language that this is the attitude of honesty, attitude of sincerity, what you really think. So we do we know what we really think? Now the question is, somebody asked, do we know what we really think? Now this is very an important question, because whatever we have read, whatever we have listened, we always repeat that. So, do we really know? Now, do we know that the whatever we have read or listened is authentic? So, authenticity is always a problem. So, speaking truth is not an easy matter. Truth can't be spoken privately. Whenever you speak truth, you always speak publicly. So, speaking truth means being yourself. If you are being yourself, means knowing the truth and speaking the truth. You know the truth, and so this is the meaning of the truthfulness. The second level is the level of affectionateness. Now, you can affectionateness, you can be, if you are abstaining from the harsh word speech. Harsh speech uttered in anger causes the hearer pain. Abusive language, bitter words, scolding, insulting, sarcastic way, talking in a sarcastic way. So, what I am saying that these are the complete, when you are talking to someone, speaking truth and affectionate love is essential, and then complete awareness of the person. When you are talking then someone, then you should have a complete awareness of the person to whom you are talking, speaking. Now I tell you an interesting, that is why because such issues come. Do we really know the other person to whom we are talking? Do we really know the husband really know the wife, or wife really know the husband, or son knows the father, or father knows the son, brother or sister, like this? Why? What I am saying all these things? Because most of our relations, because we don't know them, when I am perceiving, I give the another example so you understand. Suppose you ask the child, how do you know your mother? Then she was very affectionate. She gives me that thing, so and so. She looks after me and all this. But he does not know mother as a person. When I know a person, my relative, I know person with some my emotions. He has done something for me, I have done something for him. But the person, if I really know the person as a person, then relationship is different. So most of the time, in most of the cases, our interpersonal relationships are not perfect or not good so good as expected to be, because we do not know the person in a real sense. So perceiving them according to our emotions, we react emotionally to them. Do we understand their reactions? We never bother about it. So this is the issue, that most of the relationships are nowadays how the children, they are looking after their father, or the relationship with brother and brother and sister, and all this, husband and wife. You will find so, because you are not understanding the person as a person. So you will find a bit of refinement. Sometimes you will find a bit of refinement or rationalization here and there. But these are the examples. Generally, this is the thing that we do not understand relationships in a proper way. So this is the way. The level of helpfulness is positive, appreciative, and constructive. It's not critical, promotes other growth. So this is the way. When you talk something, then you should be positive, appreciative, constructive. If you give the criticism, then you should be constructive criticism, not over-critical, and promotes others' growth. Now, these are the essential things when you are talking to someone. Because if suppose This is known as a helpfulness. So it means that abstaining from the idle character communicate nothing. You know what? When we're talking about generally what happens in a जिसको हम बोलते हैं idle chatter or gupshup. This is not. It doesn't have any value at all. Or so your talk must be positive, appreciative, and constructive. So level of promotion, harmony and unity, whatever you are talking, that must have the harmony and unity also, abstaining from, you can say, malicious speech. Now, what I am saying, the mutual, this harmony and mutual helpfulness is not simply verbal, but really really want to help a person. So mutual self-transcendence, Buddha talks about all these things. So right speech is a mindfulness practice. Now I come to the how you can, suppose somebody comes to you and you talk to him and you make him understand that you have to improve your speaking method, or your speak must be perfect speak, so you should improve in your talk all these things. Now there is another thing. So there is a method. This is known as a right speech and mindfulness practice. So for that you can do a mindfulness practice. I shall discuss later on about the mindfulness. What is the meaning of mindfulness? Mindfulness means paying attention to what we are doing while we are doing it without judgment. What we are doing, what I am saying, mindfulness means paying attention to what we are doing while we are doing without judgment. So there is no judgment. मैं क्या कर रहा हूँ उसको मैं जान रहा हूँ, ये बात है. इसको हम कहते हैं mindfulness. So when I am speaking something to someone, then I should know that what I am doing. By undertaking this practice, suppose you take this practice, mindfulness practice in speaking. So by taking this, mindfulness practice, we commit to get greater awareness of our body, mind, and emotions. So mindfulness makes it possible to recognize what we are about to say before we say, and thus offers the freedom to choose when to speak, what to speak, and how to speak, what to say. Now these are, when we suppose you are pursuing the mindful practice of mindful practice of the speech. So what I am saying that you learn by restraining your speech in movement. How you can do it? When you are speaking, suppose you are in anger, or you are in hostility, or you are in a confused state, and you are talking to someone. So here the mindful practice will help you. Now, how it will help you? That when I say that you should choose the word, what to speak and how to speak and so on. So what you do, you first of all you stop some think. You learn to restrain your speech in moments of anger, in moments of hostility, in moments of confusion, and over the time to train heart so frequently so that some wholesome ideas come to your mind rather than the unwholesome ideas. So whenever you speak, you think just for a second you stay, think over, and then say what I am going to say. So by this method you can overcome that. So right means if suppose you will use the mindfulness practice, then you can control all these, control anger and hostility and confusion in your speech, and it may turn out to be as a love, kindness, and empathy from the heart state, right speech naturally arises. So there is another thing which is also important. You should practice yourself as a counselor, and you can use these techniques in counseling also. Because when you are a counselor, you should also practice all these things. Control over your anger, over hostility and confusion in speech, and develop the love and kindness and empathy in your speech. Now, the step is the first step. I said that you should do the mindfulness practice. How the mindfulness practice is done, I shall discuss later on. But mindfulness means paying attention what we are doing while we are doing without any judgment. This is one thing. Now the another point is the important point is right listening. We generally don't listen. We listen means what? Right listening means uh, right listening is a supplement to right speech, and this is very important. Now, you will ask me what do you mean by right listening? When you know somebody is speaking, then when he words, then speaking means that you see the person, you just try to understand what he is saying. Listening means the you are attending. Now, suppose you are going to giving an interview. Now, I have counted example. And suppose you have developed this practice, right listening. Then the person who is asking the question, you will see his face, his body, language, and all these things. That will help you, will give you the confidence and help you in answering the question. So listening means attending to our physical sensation, thoughts, emotions, as well as to voice, facial expressions, gestures, pauses, underlying meanings, and rich nuances, tones, and also and so forth. Generally, you will find when we are communicating in the family, one person is something saying and you are not listening. Just listening means you are listening to words, but you are not seeing the face of the person who is saying, is speaking. So the right is listening is essential because the without the capacity of listening deeply, the right speech cannot be developed. So it is what essential. If suppose you do not have the capacity to listen properly, deeply, then you cannot develop the right speech. And right listening is most essential. When somebody is speaking in the family, then what happened that one father complained that the children, when they were young, they used to listen me respectfully. Nowadays, they are not listening me properly because uh, they are not following my order and all this. It means that when they are speaking, then you listen them properly what they want. So without that, it's right speech is generally family what happens. So you can develop this habit. So family relationships can be improved if suppose you develop the habit of right listening. There are number of books on this. I am suggesting you, and then the Zen listening by Rebecca Sharif, the Zen listening by the Rebecca Sharif. This is one book, and the Wisdom of Listening by Mark Brady. This is another book. Third book I would like to you to read the In the Buddha's Words. Now this book Bhikkhu by Bodhi. Now this book it is 800 pages and freely available online. You can download it. And there you will find lot of issues there they have discussed. So right listen how to this is a training. And now if you are in education, that you can also use the right listening techniques. You can develop how to develop this right listening in the students, what they should do for this. So mindfulness, and then there is another I would like to suggest you that there are a lot of literature on these things. I would suggest you to see the video on the mindfulness in relations. How I was talking about the relations that or in that in terms of in the context of relation I was talking this right speech. So if you are interested, you see some videos on mindfulness in relationships. So mindfulness and right speech are primary practices used to help reach the goal of peace and tranquility. If you want peace and tranquility, without then you anger and hate and diligence and free from all this, then right speech and mindfulness and right speech are essential. So mindful practice help you in that way. So means so that this is the most essential. Now what I am saying that I taught four things: tell the truth, don't exaggerate, do not gossip, use useful language. Summarily, I use these four things: tell the truth, don't exaggerate, don't gossip, use the language, helpful language, use the helpful language. So now I come to the whether, now suppose you raise a question, whether or not I am using the principle of right speech or not. Suppose you ask this yourself, whether I am using the principle, suppose you did the mindful practice of the right speech, and then now you raise the issue whether I am using these principles of right speech or not. Now I give you three things. If your answer is yes, then you are using the. Is what I am about to say is true? Is what I am about to say kind? Is what I am about to say helpful? And you raise these three questions. If the answer is yes, then you are using the principle of right speech. So this is the test. Now you can yourself, you use you raise the issue and whether I am using the right speech or not, principles of right speech or not. So I said that you raise three questions. If the answer is yes, then you are using the principles of right speech. Is what I am about to say is true? Is what I am about to say is kind? Is what I am about to say is helpful? So tell the truth means, now this is I raised the issue long just now. Suppose there is something. Suppose I ask you, you are reading a book, and I ask you what are you doing? Then you say I am reading a book. Suppose I ask what is the color of your shirt, then you say it's a yellow or green or blue or anything. You will just tell it's. So some things are so easy you can easily answer it. You can tell the truth. But something there are some harder truths also. Suppose your friend asks, "Is my girlfriend is all right?" or "What do you think about that?" Then you will say he will be annoyed if I say something. "Oh, she is very good." Or suppose your boss asks you, "Are you working on? Do you want to work on the next project?" And you really don't want, then you say, "Yes, I'll work on that." So there are certain situations where you say yes, and you don't want to do that. We do not want to offend anybody, and that is why I say yes, not telling the truth. Sometimes what happens, your answer will be demanding. If suppose you say yes, then they will need something. You will have to do. You will have to do certain things. Or you also afraid of people, what people will think. That is, you don't want to tell the truth. And then, if suppose I tell the truth, I won't get what I want to do, what I want to get. Or I will lose something. Now see all these situations. I don't want to offend anybody. It will be demanding what other people will think, or once I will lose something. So if you analyze all these things, you will find two things. Behind all these things, there are two things: desire and the fear. So you are not speaking truth because out of sheer desire, you want something, or fear, something you will lose something. So all or whatever you do, you are not speaking truth or falsity because there are two things are working behind that: you desire and the fear. So what we are really doing is being dishonest to ourselves, hiding truth. You are hiding the truth, and once you start hiding the truth, it compounds and it creates a life. Life becomes more dissatisfactory, and the resentment will come in your life. So, in most of the people, you find dissatisfaction, resentment. It is all due to this habit of not telling the truth. Because you what are you doing due to the fear? Out of fear, or you can say desire, you are becoming dishonest to yourself, and this dishonesty is creating dissatisfaction in your life and resentment in life. I give suppose I give the example. Both husband and wife, they are living together, a young couple. So their relatives also live in the same city, and they invited them to come for the dinner. And wife decided to go with her friends to the for the dinner. Now she tells her husband, "I am going with my friends," and he wants that she should go with the relatives. He says, "Also, I don't mind you go." He pretends and says, "Is it fine? You may go. You may go out with your friends." Then, what she thinks, wife is thinking, my partner thinks I am telling the truth. So he goes out with she goes out with her friends. Now, when she comes back, then there is a kind of the passive, a kind of passive aggressive. Now she says, "What is happening?" So say, "I am fine." Now what is happening? They both are pretending. They are. He know he doesn't. He did not want, but he said pretended. Yes, you may go. And she thought that he agreed. He permitted me. So what I am saying, that both the person are not helping each other. There are a lot of things where their passive aggressive behavior. So really nothing is. Again, you ask. So what I am saying, that both the persons are suffering. They suffer because I suffer. The husband suffered because he did not want that she should go with her friends, and she thinks that my husband is happy that I am with my friends. So it means that this situation. If he should have frankly said that we should go to our relatives like this. So most of the time we behave like that. They are different. What I am saying, that the do not next three rules are there. Do not exaggerate. This do not gossip. Use useful language. So the all three comes from the first rule. Before I learned the second, then do not exaggerate. डू नॉट एग्जरेट का मतलब होता है कि आप चीज़ों को बढ़ा चढ़ा के दो तरह से कहते हैं, पॉजिटिवली और नेगेटिवली. He is so bright, very intelligent. He is intelligent, but you say he is a genius. So this is one way. And then something you say this is very worst day. So negatively or positively you exaggerate. So we are not telling the truth. We are lying to others and ourselves. So this is a, because there is a Buddhism, there is a concept like equanimity, the art of staying balanced. So your equanimity is disturbed by that. If suppose you are using the exaggerating the things, this is the worst day for my life. This is one way. Or you can say, I will never do this thing. So what I am saying that the exaggeration always, uh, she is always late. So pay, when are you saying, you always pay the attention to your words. I use the word mindfulness in the uh, right speech. So whenever you are using the word, whether you are negative or positively, pay attention to words that overemphasize the negative of a situation or positive of a situation. This is one thing. Secondly, you can, somebody says, man, I have this practice, I want to overcome. Then you can suggest him that this is the way how when you do the mindfulness of right perfect speech, and you pay attention to words that emphasize the negative or situation or a positive situation. So pay attention to your reactions. You are over the top. Is everything worst possible scenario? So what I am saying that these are the things how you can overcome the over exaggeration, prevent yourself, and don't gossip also. Generally, what happens? Somebody told you something. One lady told to her friend that we both are going to consult a psychologist. Uh, they are going to start a therapy. And immediately after the phone, she talks to her phone. They are going to the psychotherapist. They have some problem. And then they conject that they are going to divorce or there is some problem like this. Now somebody asks you, why did you say all these things? So generally, this is a kind gossiping is something not good. This is whether you can ask the question: is your information to share? If I share this information, whom I am helping? Why do I want to share this information? If whoever this information belongs to know, what will happen? So what I am saying that these are the things which we can control mindfulness techniques. So use helpful language always. When helpful language, anything blocks, prevents either person in conversation or understanding the other's point of view. So use all these things. So whenever what I am saying that these are the things which are essential, and you can use mindful techniques, right? You can cultivate this communication process. So tell the truth, don't exaggerate, do not gossip, use useful language. So this is the steps how you can use the language. Now I come to the if you have any problem, I can discuss then. Do you have any clarification something? आप कुछ पूछना चाहते हैं इस बारे में या कुछ आगे फिर? नहीं.
सर मेरा एक क्वेश्चन था.
Yes, please.
I was feeling a little confused when you said that philosophical counseling is for somebody who is rational, functional, and mentally well balanced. तो अगर हम ये सब virtues cultivate करने को ही philosophy as a way of life as practice बोल रहे हैं, तो फिर how can we expect that like somebody who is already well on all these accounts needs philosophy in the first part, and then the person who does need philosophy, are we kind of excluding that person? और philosophical counselor खुद अपने आप को इन parameters पे कैसे जज करते हैं, पर अगर खुद ही करते हैं जज तो मतलब फिलोसफी खुद से कर सकते हैं, तो फिर काउंसलर की जरूरत क्यों है?
Sir, this is Riya Mittal ji asking a question regarding the worldview and rationality.
नहीं, मैं जो ये कह रहा था कि भाई ये कुछ ऐसी चीज है जो काउंसलर को खुद को भी डेवलप करना चाहिए। और अभी मैंने शुरू में कहा था कि भाई हमारे पास कोई मेंटल इलनेस का केस तो कोई आता नहीं फिलोसफिकल काउंसलर के पास में। वो इंटर इस तरह के केसेस आते हैं जिनमें कि वो अपने डेली, भाई मेरा कम्युनिकेशन सिस्टम गड़बड़ है, आई कैन नॉट कम्युनिकेट प्रॉपरली विद पीपल, I don't cannot make friends. My relationship thing. So first of all, you have to control your speech. So what I am saying that you should learn these things from Buddhism is giving this help to you, and whenever required, you can use as a technique as a technique. You can use it whenever it requires. So this is the purpose of it.
Sorry for the counter question, but that is the point कि अगर हम सिर्फ बुद्धिस्ट धर्म पढ़ के ही अगर हम कर सकते हैं वो फिलोसफीज डेवलप, तो फिर अगर एक इंसान कर सकता है तो फिर बाकी लोग भी पढ़ के क्यों नहीं कर सकते? Why do they need a counselor?
Riya, क्या?
Riya ji, please repeat your question. There was some problem hearing.
Okay, yeah, I'll repeat.
Yes, ma'am.
जैसे कि आपने कहा कि काउंसलर के लिए खुद भी डेवलप करना जरूरी है, गुड लिसनिंग स्किल्स, राइट स्पीच। तो अगर हम कल्चर पे जो लिटरेचर हमारे पास ऑलरेडी है, हम बुद्धा की टीचिंग्स पढ़ के एक इंसान वो वर्चूज डेवलप कर सकता है, तो बाकी सब लोग क्यों नहीं कर सकते? और फिर काउंसलर की जरूरत ही क्या है अगर हम पढ़ के डेवलप कर सकते हैं?
देखिए, ये तो प्रैक्टिस की बात है। जब भी आप ये करेंगे ना, मैंने अभी कहा था कि अगर आप ये करना चाहते हैं तो पढ़ने से तो होगा ही नहीं। आपको ध्यान हो, मैंने जब चर्चा की थी सम्यक संकल्प के बारे में, तो मैंने कहा कि पढ़ने से नहीं होता ये, जब तक प्रैक्टिस ना करें। अभी इसलिए क्या है कि अगर आप, मैंने कहा कि माइंडफुलनेस इन ए राइट स्पीच, अब माइंडफुलनेस टेक्निक का राइट स्पीच में यूज करना। माइंडफुलनेस इज ए ध्यान टेक्निक। अब उसको आप बता रहे हैं थ्योरेटिकली, तो वो जब तक प्रैक्टिस ना करे, अब मान सपोज करो कि आप बता रहे हैं और आपने कभी किया ही नहीं, तो आप क्या बताएंगे? तो मैं कह रहा हूँ कि अगर आप बुद्धिस्टिक टेक्निक यूज करना चाहते हैं काउंसलिंग में अपनी में, तो आप खुद इनको चीज़ों को जानें। और ये इतनी ज़्यादा चीज़ें हैं यहाँ पर, बहुत सारी चीज़ें आपको यूट्यूब पे पढ़ी मिल जाएंगी। जैसे मैंने कहा कि रिलेशनशिप पर आपको मिल जाएंगी चीज़ें, एक्सरसाइजेज मिल जाएंगी। जैसे आप देखेंगे कि मैंने अभी एक शब्द यूज़ किया था, लविंग काइंडनेस, मित्रता, कल्याण मित्रता। नाउ कल्याण मित्रता इज ए मेडिटेशन। तो अभी हम किसी के बारे में गलत ना सोचें, तो आप ही कैसे डेवलप करेंगे? तो उसके लिए प्रैक्टिस करनी पड़ेगी। अब जब तक आप प्रैक्टिस ना करेंगे, आप ना समझेंगे, तो आप अपने क्लाइंट को ही समझाना चाहते हैं तो कैसे समझा पाएंगे? तो मैंने कहा अगर जो लोग फिलोसफिकल काउंसलिंग में बुद्धिस्टिक टेक्निक का यूज़ करना चाहते हैं, और ये हम ही नहीं कर रहे हैं, पूरी दुनिया में जितने भी काउंसलर्स हैं फिलोसफिकल काउंसलर सब यूज़ करते हैं। उन्होंने चीज़ों को बदला हुआ है। कोई ऐसा नहीं है जैसे कि ये सब करते हैं, रान लाहब भी करते हैं, सभी करते हैं ये लोग। तो देखिए कुछ क्या होता है कि देयर इज नो एक्सपेक्टेशन ऑफ एनीथिंग व्हेन आई एम टॉकिंग अबाउट द लविंग काइंडनेस meditation. Now what is this meditation? In this meditation there is no expectation from anything return. I am not expecting, but I am having some kind of love ideal. You can say the ideal pure love to anybody. Now this is it. The loving. It starts with loving ourselves. And then it also later on, loving kindness, friendship, family, your parents and relationship and person to whom you do not know. So for example, uh, suppose we are doing all this. I give the example. You just concentrate, sit down, and then close your eyes, and these ideas should come in your mind. Just repeat all these things, and you will get the what I am saying. So suppose you say, I said, started yourself. May I be free from inner and outer harm and danger. May I be safe and protected. ये जस्ट आप अपने कंसंट्रेट करें हार्ट पर और ये सेंटेंसेस बोलें. फिर ऐसे कई बार प्रैक्टिस करें. मे आई बी फ्री फ्रॉम मेंटल सफरिंग और डिस्ट्रेस. मे आई बी हैप्पी. मे आई बी फ्री ऑफ फिजिकल पेन्स एंड सफरिंग. May I be healthy and strong. May I be able to live in this world happily, peacefully, joyfully with else. Now the same thing you can return. May my parents, my grandparents, or teachers, anything. You can just pray for them, and then you can pray for those persons to whom you don't like even. So what I am saying that if you develop this practice, you will be your behavior will be quite different. So this is the may I be peaceful, may I be happy, may I be well, may I be safe, may I be free from suffering, may all beings be peaceful, may all beings be happy. You can talk about my parents, my friends, my grandparents. So what I am saying that this is a dhyan technique. If you want to use this technique, then first of all you perform yourself, you learn for yourself, and it will take time. Suppose you do 10 or 15 days in this technique, then you will learn. After some time, you will control yourself, and you will see the marked difference in your temperament and all this. So once you have done, then you suggest to your client, and then you can suggest. Otherwise, suggesting has no meaning at all. Okay, you are not following, and then you are suggesting. So that is why I said that if suppose you want to use the uh, suppose you want to do this technique, then you should also learn all these things. Suppose I don't want to use Buddhistic techniques, then that's all right. You may use another techniques also. But suppose you, because why I am saying that Buddhistic technique is used all over the world, not here. If you go to some sites in America, most of the counselors they are using Buddhistic techniques in a different way. Not using and suppose you are attending their classes, they charge fees for that. It's not very easy. So what I am saying that suppose you want to develop, you develop yourself. And there are number of videos are there books are there. I will suggest some books also to you. Suppose you want to
Excuse me,
take it.
sir.
So this
That
is
has been the question from Eva and Andrio. She wants to know about certain videos and books related to these Buddhistic therapies. Eva, would you like
I
to ask your question yourself?
So thank you very much for the presentation. Yes, I thank you also for reading my question. Yeah, it would be really interesting because I really am in line with Dr. Sharma presentation, but sometimes we face some difficulties in bringing the principles, Buddhist principles, in our practical life. So it would be any support documents or films or videos that you could suggest that could help us to bring these practical principles in the physical philosophical counseling? Thank you.
most of the videos, I was just giving something theoretically, and then I suggested some books also. Just I suggested the book on listening, Zen listening, and then Jain listening, and then wisdom of listening, the Buddha, the words. So what I'm saying, the most you will find lot of material there, and I cannot say present in that way, but dhyan that you will have to. Now I give you another suggesting a book. If you can, this you can read from now you can download from Google. the secret book of Zen Buddhi, and they talk about the how to be joyousness therapy. That this is the जो state of how you can be in a state of being at peace and with your own thoughts and being also self-aware of your place within the universe, kind of. So then this is the so Zen therapy you can understand from the view different levels of consciousness and these things. So most of the literature is there in you will find. I can just suggest at this moment because if suppose I discuss which is very difficult for to discuss all these things. That is, just you can discuss only one thing, suppose one practice, but it requires that somebody must know all these things. In the previously, you can read from the. I'm just suggesting you can read from Google. You search, you will find it. And I'm just giving the now mindfulness. I'm just for example. Now there is a book, Maha Satipatthana Sutra. Now this book is available both English and Hindi also. So this is a mindfulness technique, talks about mindfulness techniques. Now Sati means the fully aware of wholesome state of mind. And Pathan means the establishing the attention to a fully aware, wholesome state of mind. So it means that this is the foundation of mindfulness technique. Now, the mindful techniques has a four level. The mindful contemplation of body, mindful contemplation of feeling, mindful contemplation of state of minds, and mindful contemplation of mind objects. Now, how to contemplate? This is the process. So I shall just discussing because I'll discuss some things theoretically, and then actual practice. I will recommend you first you read these things, and then it will be easier. You can do it. You practice by yourself also. So what I am saying that is suppose you read, I tell you the wisdom, there are three types of wisdom. First wisdom is that is based on what you have read and what you have listened and what this is the kind of first wisdom. That is called the Supta Pragya in Buddhism. And then secondly, the second is the you think over that. That is called a meditative pragya, meditative wisdom. Now, this may be two forms. The one is the real and unreal. What happens you have some kind of experience? Immediately, those who have read psychology, they can understand the meaning of perception. Now, what is perception? Sensation plus meaning. You just have a sub sensation, plus you add the meaning, it becomes a perception. So we whatever we have some consciousness, then immediately we add something. So the thing we cannot see things as it is. There was a question on phenomenological method and how to use phenomenological method. What we do in phenomenology, the basic purpose of phenomenology is the knowing the experience by bracketing technique. Because in our so-called daily day-to-day experience, we have added a lot of things in that, lot of misbeliefs and disbeliefs. So we have to bracket them and we have to reach to the basic experience, real experience. So similarly, if you want to know about the client, you can use this technique in a counseling so that you can find out the basic understanding and what are his, the wrong beliefs, false beliefs he has added in those things. So this is how you are not exactly the methodology used, but the process is used. In phenomenology, what is happening? We are trying to understand the experience, the bare experience, and so this is why. So the mindfulness technique, and then finally, whatever knowledge you have achieved by the contemplation, then comes the you have to experience that contemplation. So this is known as the bhavana me pragya, the highest, the knowledge. So the mindfulness is the kind of ability to keep something in mind. There are two things what I am saying that in Buddhist it functions three ways: remembering to stay alert to what you are doing in the present moment, and without any your beliefs and accept pure. And second, remembering to recognize the skillful and unskillful qualities that arise in the mind, and remembering how to abandon effectively the qualities to get the way of concentration. So these are the three things. Now how we can do this is by practice. The positive evolution means if you see talk about the progress in evolution. Suppose we talk about the evolution of the society or evolution of the human beings. Now, what is the meaning of theory of evolution? Theory of evolution means the evolution of the awareness. This is the approach how gradually we awareness increases. So mindfulness is a awareness in mindfulness. Awareness is knowing or experiencing, or it is the presence of mind, attentiveness or awareness. So this is the way how, but this is the technique. So how to use this? So this is the mindfulness. The book I suggested, Satipatthana Sutra, that give you the. But you will have to start the practice for that. So that takes time. So awareness, unmindfulness is in every day. Now I suppose what is mindfulness. I'll explain that in a different way. Uh, what is the opposite of mindfulness? The unmindfulness. Why I am talking about? Because most of the time we are unmindful. So that is why I am talking about unmindfulness. Unmindfulness is our everyday life. It's a nature. Simply we forget things. So forgetfulness. So why, now you can ask why do you forget? Now, this is a philosophical question or psychological question, anything. But we easily distracted mind. Mind is turned away और inside away. इसको हम कहते हैं सम्यक स्मृति कहा गया उन्होंने. And in psychologist, Evengas was the psychologist. Evengas, and he worked on memory and he gave the forgetfulness curve and so on. So most of the time you'll find the students are in tension and housewives are in tension. They some work come and they forget one thing. Suppose you want to write a letter to your friend, and so there is a phone call. You start talking to him, then suddenly you think that I am. Let us have a cup of coffee. So you go to the and then you prepare coffee. So the one thing come, another somebody comes to meet you. So basically you wanted to write a letter to your friend, something like. So what I am saying that the most of the time this happens. So because our concentration is not there, so we do not concentrate wholeheartedly on what we are doing, thinking, saying in half-hearted way. Finally, what I am saying that we can unmindfulness is a state of forgetfulness, a distraction, of poor concentration, of an absence of continuity, the purpose, no real individuality. So mindfulness is a state of recollection and undistractedness, concentration or continuity, commitment of purpose, and then developing the individuality. So, how if suppose you want to develop these states, then you will have to use the mindfulness technique. Of course, that awareness generally the mind is deliberately kept at the level of bare attention, a detached observation of what is happening within us and around us in the present moment. So, living in the present in a perfect awareness is the right mindfulness. The mind is trained to remain in the present, open, quiet, and alert, contemplating the present event. All the judgments and the interpretation have to be suspended, or if they occur, just registered and dropped. So mindful exercise are watch each occasions of experiences as it arises. So you develop the habit and then stand and passes by. Mind does not float away in the past and future. Once you start this technique, mindfulness technique, and you become an expert, then mind will not float. Uh, just like you just put a pumpkin in a pond, It will floating here and there. Mind floats like that. If suppose you put a stone in a pond, it will just sit in the and it will not move. So mindfulness is like that. So whole process is away coming back to the present and standing here and now without slipping away, without getting swept by distending thought. So these are the problems comes day to day life. Students also face this problem. So main theme of our discussion is perfect awareness, which is the level of awareness. So that is why I give the example so that you will understand. There are four principles and the awareness of things, awareness of self. I am not talking exactly about the book, but I am discussing in a different way. Awareness of things, awareness of self, awareness of other people's, and awareness of reality, truth. Now, awareness of things. Now, I am raising a question. Are we really aware of the whole material object environment or nature? Are we aware of that? I give the example interestingly. My teacher, most of the students of the department know Professor Dayakrishna. So, I used to go with him when after his retirement to the university campus for in the evening for stroll. And once, he stopped at a place and he told me there used to be a tree, and then he gave the name of the tree also. Where is it? What happened to that? And he was so he knew how many trees there, and so it's about, that is why I'm saying do we really know the things? So many students and teachers are here. If suppose I ask some questions, they will be fail to answer this question. He will tell you the how many trees were there, because uh, we are unaware about the nature. And why I am unaware, reason is given that that we have no time to stop and look at the anything, no time to look at anything. The whole problem is that we are not really aware of our environment, because we never really stop and look at them. If suppose somebody says this is the issue. So this is problem, that if suppose most of the time we are in a hurry, we have peripheral awareness of things. So what I am saying, that looking and seeing, we generally see our projected subjectivity. Now I give an example. Uh, one foreigner with a Nepali fellow went to the jungle, and he saw a beautiful tree and said, "How beautiful it is!" And the Nepali fellow says, it will give enough firewood in the winter. Now he was seeing the beauty of the tree and he was seeing the firewood. So whatever we generally see our projected subjectivity. This is the example. We have to learn to look things themselves for their own sake, without personal preferences, subjectivity, desire. Uh, I give another example. One of the painter, amateur artist asked his teacher, "I want to paint the bamboos." So he told that you go and see the bamboos. And he, for some number of years, months, he was in the bamboo jungle. He saw in all the seasons, in winter, rainy season, the whole morning, evening. And when finally he just drew the bamboos. So somebody say bamboo painting bamboo. When he becomes, creativity comes when you see things in themselves. So not with the subjectivity. So what I am saying that the most of the things where you have to develop this thing, and it helps. So Zen, Buddhism, I just mentioned, we should have this attitude towards all material things. Uh, we should learn to look to see, learn to look to see, learn to be aware and receptive. So this is the essential for, and if you want for artistic temperament is most essential. Now this is one thing. Now the second is awareness of body and its movement. Uh, the when I'm moving, do I know I'm walking or sitting or standing or lying down? If suppose you are aware about your movements, you can never be in haste or confused manner. You must have heard about the Japanese tea ceremony. It's a very interesting. There is a perfect silence. So they see things and what is happening, how the इधर हम लोग जब चाय पीते हैं तो अखबार पढ़ते तो हमें पता नहीं चाय का क्या टेस्ट होता है. Now you are not enjoying the tea. So the really if you read about the Japanese tea ceremony, you will find that how this is very ceremonial and the complete it gives a complete dignity in harmony and peace for that. So this is the kind of what I am saying. All time observing complete silence. Uh, we really enjoying? That is why I raised the issue. Now give another example. Now take the example of business ethic, business lunch. When you are there in a business lunch, they are talking lot of things. They are not enjoying the lunch. So when you do two things contradictory, so things at a time. So what I am saying that this is the situation. So they start the breathing session. So this is one of the mindful technique is if suppose you want to learn, first you start meditation or breathing meditation. You just close your eyes, sit down, and then see your breathing. Just see. Do not don't do anything. Just see. Your long breathing, inhaling, out. You know the so breathing is coming and passing, long, short, and you do. Thoughts are coming. Don't give importance to thoughts. So this is the way you can do all these things, but it will take time. So awareness of feeling. If once you develop this habit, I will discuss exactly the what how it is done. Awareness of feeling means becoming more aware of our emotional life. We will find that unskillful means unethical, I mean, wholesome, or akushal. They use the word akushal. Then kushal means the ethical. So that you can get to refine things. So what I am saying that the most of the time the we work and we are not aware about the thing. Awareness of thought. Now what is the awareness of thought? I ask you, are you what are you thinking? Then often do we really think? We just allow our thoughts to come, just drift from flow. This and this. So thoughts are, flowing, drifting through the mind. So what you can do, you learn to you watch the thing, thought. So how you can control? Learn to watch your movement to see your thoughts. So from where they come and go. So this is how this technique in meditation they teach. So the flow of thought will be reduced if you start watching that. Because somebody say, all the time I have thoughts are coming my mind. I am so overburdened. How to overcome all my problem? Sometimes negative thoughts are coming. All these thoughts are coming. So start thinking about the thoughts. Just pay attention to that, and then from where they are coming. So you see those your thoughts. So if they will stop coming. The flow of thought will reduce immediately. So all the three kinds of awareness: body awareness and movements awareness and the awareness of the feeling and emotions and uh, breathing. They must be practiced. Without the practice, you cannot. Awareness is the most. Why I am saying the awareness is the most transforming agent that can transform you. So just like heat is transformed, the water is heat transforms the water. So these awareness also transforms the psychic content. Content is refined and sublimated. Now give another example of awareness of people. Now awareness of people, how we are aware of another person.
Sir, we have 5 more minutes to go. After 5 minutes, it will be quarter past 8.
To awareness, how do we have awareness of people as a body, as a third person? I'm talking about I and Thou, Martin Buber's book. Now you read what he talks about that thing. So these are the what I'm saying, that the mindfulness technique. So I suggest you next time we meet, then you can read those Maha Satipatthana Sutra, and then to try to do some practice of these things. I think I have taken time, but if suppose you are interested in Buddhistic techniques used in philosophical counseling, then you will have to practice yourself. So there's a lot of literature you have to read. There are lot of websites. They teach you all these things. And thank you. We shall discuss next time.
Thank you very much for the answer. And just to clarify that I am a Vipassana practitioner, so I really understand what you said until now. So thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's very nice. So, friends, we had a very long, but I think a very productive session today. We started with some recap of the lectures done here in the past, and then we had the presentation from Yashwin Gopal from Mauritius. Manishji, are you asking some question?
No, sir.
Uh, so, and finally, as it was decided that Professor K.L. Sir would be speaking at length about certain more things, and he has spoken elaborately about the mindfulness and the Buddhistic techniques, and he assures that if we are interested, he'll be speaking more about the Buddhistic techniques. But all said and done, philosophical counseling is more about practicing, doing it ourselves, making ourselves capable, rather than attending to lectures or reading any books. So it involves a lot of practical aspect. I hope friends have enjoyed it very nicely, and we would be interested in joining such sessions again and again, with the promise of bringing you even better presentations and more elaborate lectures and clarifications. We say now close the session for today, and see you soon again. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. हाँ, ये आज का सेशन तो समाप्त हुआ। मुझे लगता है कि ज़्यादातर लोगों ने लीव भी कर दिया है। केएल सर हैं अभी? मैं समझता हूँ कि बाकी की बात व्हाट्सएप पर होगी। यहाँ से हम लोग लॉग आउट करें।
देखिए, हमारा मतलब है कि हमको ट्रेनिंग वाली बात है ये।
जी, जी,
लेक्चर से तो कुछ नहीं होगा, जब तक आप पढ़ो ना खुद, हाउ यू विल बी प्रैक्टिसिंग काउंसलर। तो केवल आप खुद पढ़ें, और मैं बता सकता हूँ वहाँ से चीज़ें पढ़िए। मैं इन चीज़ों को अब दोबारा बता सकते हैं कि आप ये पढ़ो, फिर समझो और फिर प्रेजेंट करो यहाँ।
सर, सेशन को क्लोज कर देते हैं, फोन पर बात करते हैं फिर इसके आगे, है ना? थैंक यू एवरीबॉडी।
अच्छा ठीक है, मैं भी बंद करता हूँ इसको।